So I'm fixing this detail, the first call out. And what am I fixing? Well, apparently we need something structural here because it looks weird opening a window and opening this window directly on the cellulose. We know that there are vertical stats, but having this horizontal structure, I think it makes more sense. And I have changed the line type of the cellulose. Instead of having a black hatch, I have created like a grayish hatch, and I think it will work better. But again, we have to print this again and again until it's perfect. But I want to work on the other one. I want to work on call out number 2, because there is a lot of work here that we need to do. So first, I think looking at that, yeah, this is the structural element. Okay, so that's the wood, the glue laminated wood structure. So we have to convey the idea that this is the structural element. So I'm going to select this. You see that this is the glue lamp beam with the buckets. Everything what we have here, this is the steel connection to another beam or to the column. So it looks a little weird, but if I do this, if I override graphics in view by element, if this is the real, the solid structural element, I think I'm going to select a background solid, and it's going to be gray. And the foreground, this is the surface, sorry. That's the surface pattern. I don't want to make it visible. What I want is the cut pattern. Okay, so the background of the cut pattern, it has to be solid and gray. Okay, that's the structural element. I think it's too dark, so I'm going to change this to this light gray color. Maybe too dark, but that's the structural element, so maybe it makes sense. Anyway, I'm going to leave it that way. And I need the foreground, I need a pattern. What is this? This is wood. Here we have different options for wood. Let's do, don't like this one a lot. Let's use this one. What about this one? Okay, maybe that's the, so now we convey the idea that this is the right structural element, okay, because that's the glue laminated thing. This is something, this is the solid wood element in which the joists are resting. So in this one, I have to override in view. This is not a structural thing, okay? So it's not as important as this element. So probably what I'm gonna do here is the cut pattern. I'm going to make it like this, diagonal. And the outline, okay, I will work with the lines. But okay, so this is something that it's good, but it's not something as important as that one. What do we have here? This is the cellulose. Okay, so this is the cellulose filling, because I have to wrap everything with this cellulose. So I override graphics in view by element. If I remember, it has to be a solid fill. And the color, I think it was gray, light gray, 225, 225, and 225. Okay, so that was the color of the thermal insulation of the cellulose. And then the foreground, it was this diagonal 5, but the color, it was gray. Okay, so we have to be consistent, and the same criteria that we have for this material, if it's the same material, we need the same criteria on that callout. And then that was the rigid insulation. So what was my rigid insulation? It was gray. It was gray, the same gray as the cellulose, but with a different hatch because it's a different type of insulation. So I come back here and I select all these, override graphics in view. Cut pattern, the background is the solid material and it's 225. The color 225 and 225. And I don't need any material, so I don't activate the foreground cut pattern, because what I want now is to use this annotate this insulation. So I use it here. And what was the thickness of this? If I click this one, it was 1/1/2. Okay. So I have to select this, and this is 1.5. There you go. Okay, so here, this is thermal insulation, the same color as this one. The hatch is different because the thermal insulation is different. So now I can use the same insulation. We know that the thickness should be 1.5, and it has to go from this point to that point, and from this to that point. Okay, so now there's a hierarchy of gray things. The darkest is the structural element. Then we have thermal insulation, it's grayish, the lighter and yellow one. And we have two different kinds of thermal insulation. So the hatch of the thermal insulation should be different. This is cellulose, by the way. So we have to apply the cellulose here. That's the OSB. So I have to filter, select the walls. And this part is cellulose. So override graphics in view. And the cut pattern, the background is solid. The color is 225. And the foreground pattern is this 1.5. Oh, and the color, it's gray. There you go. But if you have the same orientation, so there to 1.5, but 1, 3, yeah. So probably it should have the same orientation. Okay, we're getting there, but probably one of the most important things is this. Okay, so at some point we need to get rid of the water here. Okay, so you see that we have a waterproof layer. And so that's the rain screen. So that's the cavity. So we have the waterproof layer here, and we have to get rid of the water in this direction. So how can we do it here? Good question. Okay, so that's the point in which I need to draw it on the board or on paper, and then figure out what I want. So that's what I have done. I have created with solid regions. I have created this with field regions. I have created these flashing elements to lead the water out of the building. And I created this to create the slope. Okay, so it's this can be something made of foam. I think that would be the right thing, something made of foam with that slope, so that we can lean the flashing on it, and then we can get rid of the water. Are we done with this? No, because we need this barrier. Okay, so this is the barrier that has to be continuous. Here we have this overlap, remember? So we have this, and we need this barrier to protect the cellulose again in that part of the detail. So probably what we can do is to edit that extrusion. I'm going to move it slightly out, like here. Why am I doing this? Because I want to place this water barrier between this and that. Okay, so I'm going to do it. It's in annotate, in detail lines. We have this waterproof detail line here, and this waterproof line has to go all the way down here, and then all the way down there. Okay, so we protect this, and then we wrap this element that we have created here, and that flashing, this aluminum flashing, it's protecting the this water barrier. Yeah, I think that will work. The thing is that now we have to continue this on the roof, because one of the key points of this kind of barrier is that it's a continuous element. So we can't interrupt this barrier. So I can keep going with the detail line, and I can go up, all the way up. And then on the roof, it will be like this. Okay, so now we have a continuous barrier, and when we interrupt this, because we open the window, all the water that can be stopped here, it has to go down, and then it has to go out of the building. Okay, are we done? Not yet. That's a wooden element. So for these kind of elements, I can use the same hatch that I used here. If I could select all of them at once and override graphics in view, then the cut pattern, it has to be this one, this diagonal, apply. Okay. Okay, so now all these elements are made of wood, and they have this texture. Okay, I've moved this slightly. I don't know in your drawing, but I think all these should be OSB. Okay, so the OSB should be placed all the way up. So I can use another field region. I'm going to use a rectangle, and I'm going to create an element here all the way up. And this needs to have the same hatch that I'm using for the OSB here. Okay, so that's the OSB. So in this one, I have to override graphics in view by element. And the surface pattern, it has to be material, and I think it was one of those. Yeah, I think that's the same hatch that I have there. By the way, this element is made of cellulose. So I can create another field region. This. And this is cellulose. So if it's cellulose, I have to select that. I have to override graphics in view. And the surface pattern, the background, it has to be solid, and the color is 225. The foreground, it has to be this diagonal up. The material is gray. There you go. So I have the cellulose here, and we have this element. This is to stop the cellulose there. So this would be wood. Okay, so if I select this one, override graphics in view by element, and the cut pattern, it has to be the same wood that I have used for other materials. The same thing with this. Okay, so I have to select all this, override graphics in view by element, and that's the cut pattern that I have used here.